Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Ag Forecast brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Let's go back over the last week and take a look at where precipitation fell across the United States. We can clearly see the impacts of Hurricane Irma, which we covered in great detail in our last video update. When it was all said and done, aside from the fact that we still have millions without power in parts of Florida, we can see that we had quite a bit of precipitation move through both the cotton and peanut belts here in the south, and certainly got back up to a region here where we had had some very heavy rains from Harvey in parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. So really Irma's biggest impact was going to be here in the southeast, and it's still lifting on off to the north and east now, keeping this whole area considerably cooler than average. Meanwhile, a big section of the Corn Belt went pretty dry for the last 7 days, including most of our central states getting all the way down into Texas. But the reason why I want to show you this is we're going to see some pretty big changes in the overall weather patterns coming up very, very soon. But let's just kind of let this serve as a backdrop. To add to that, I want to show you these graphics. And I put this black arrow over the top map to kind of make a really important point here. You see, the map that's in the background is the statewide maximum temperature ranks for the month of August. We have the minimum temperature ranks for the month of August down here. Now, we have had a pattern such that a rather large ridge has been a semi-permanent feature over the western United States that most of the month of August continued to kind of plunge into a deep, broad trough across the eastern two-thirds of the country. And that's really put a lot of the central states here having their, very near their coolest into the summer on record, coolest August on record. The maximum high temperatures were much below normal, and the minimum temperatures through the heart of the Corn Belt were as well. While out west, it was just a scorcher. Well, if this is what our pattern looked like in the month of August, we've had some hints now for the last couple of weeks that things might be shifting and changing as we get into the middle and second half of September and getting into October. And that's important. We got to talk about it. Before we get there, though, let's take a look at the August precipitation anomalies. So again, because of that broader trough, quite a bit of shower and thunderstorm activity, quite a bit of rain that's kind of come through the central states, keeping things wet. While we've been a little bit drier than average, kind of deep inside of that trough in parts of Illinois, eastern Iowa, Indiana, and Ohio. So after a wet, middle part of the growing season, some of these regions have really dried out here toward the end. So leave this all as a backdrop as we kind of stretch our way out and move into the longer range forecast. First things first. If you're watching this video in Montana, we have got some pretty serious weather we got to start talking about. Some folks up there are going to start to see their first snowfall of the season in the higher elevations, and that is all compliments of that shift in the position of the jet stream that we need to be talking about. So let's take a look at what it means, because we could also be talking some frost threat across the northern states as well. And just as a preview, this region is getting wet, really, really wet over the next couple of weeks. So let's look into it. As we always do, we try to digest what's going on in the upper levels of the atmosphere. It's kind of our first clue of the overall pattern as it's going to set up with troughs and ridges. Now, I'm going to play this again, and I want you to keep a close eye on the eastern Pacific. You see these little things right here? These are typhoons, okay? There's really one big one that we have to keep an eye on right in through here. And this time of year, we always have to watch for these typhoons and their circulations to get absorbed as they move to the north into the overall flow pattern of the jet stream. Now, what's the consequence of that? As they do that, they tend to perturb it, producing troughs that translate across the Pacific, and they change the weather in the United States. You know, it may take 10, 15, 20 days for it to have an impact, but when I see a lot of typhoon activity, which is what we're seeing now over in the part of the far western Pacific, that tells me the jet stream is on the move and it's going to be wavy, and that means a lot of trough ridges moving across the country. So let's start at the beginning, getting here into Thursday. So first of all, here is what's left over of Irma, keeping the eastern part of the Corn Belt, Ohio River Valley, still with some rain and also some cooler temperatures. But check this out. Watch here over the western United States as I move into parts of late Thursday night and into Friday and Saturday. See that trough feature? That trough feature is going to do two important things. One, as it digs, it's going to kick off a low pressure system out ahead of it, kind of ejecting here out of the northern plains, or into the northern plains, racing on off to the north and east over toward the Hudson Bay. Now that big low pressure system is going to be making a lot of precipitation for the end of this week for the northern plains and the northern Midwest. But it's also going to be digging in some colder temperatures here for parts of Montana and Idaho, bringing in a big time frost threat for some lower country. Now, if you're ahead of this, we're going to see major rebounds in the temperatures. It's going to really warm up toward the end of this week and weekend because you're going to be under the ridge that's out to the east of it. But check this out. See here in the Bering Sea, this deep trough. Well, watch what it does as I move into the weekend toward the beginning of next week. That trough slides here into the Gulf of Alaska. And as it gets into the Gulf of Alaska, it plunges by the time we get into the start of next week, so Monday, into another deep trough over the Pacific Northwest. Do you see the pattern shift that we're talking about? Now there's a trough here and a big ridge over the eastern two-thirds of the country. So whereas this was cool in the month of August, we're now going to be seeing a rebound back toward warmer temperatures. We've been kind of talking about this for the last couple of weeks. So here it is kind of coming out and kind of into fruition. Now, as this trough digs in, the western and northern corn belts, so Montana, parts of the Dakotas, as this trough digs in, we might be seeing our first legitimate threat for a frost. Now, this would be normal. Our third week of September is the normal frost time period for here. But this is not spelling a frost for anything east of those regions. We're going to be under the influence of this ridge that's out to the east of it, keeping our temperatures much, much warmer here than back there. So there's a lot going on, but just see this. Trough, ridge, trough, ridge, trough, ridge. The jet stream has a lot of waves in it. That stands for an active pattern as we move through the rest of September. Now, let's take a look at precipitation over the next 10 days. You see, I told you it's good looking wet for the northern plains. Here we're looking at the accumulation of precipitation from the GFS model moving forward. And sure enough, we are seeing that first system combined with the second one coming out of the Rocky Mountains, really getting into Friday and Saturday here. So here's the start of it. This is our snow threat in the higher country in Montana and parts of Wyoming here. Rain moving across Montana, rain moving into the Dakotas on Friday. And it's going to spread on off to the north and east with time. So as I continue to move this out here, look at the rain coming. Now watch this. As I move forward getting into Sunday, there's a feature coming out, a tropical feature coming out of the Baja, and watch what it does. See this guy down here? As I move forward, the GFS model is taking that thing, stretching it over the mountains of Mexico, into the high country here in West Texas and parts of New Mexico, going across the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, and getting it pulled into the big, broad, low-pressure system that's moving out with that next trough early next week, racing across parts of Minnesota and Iowa. And so this is interesting. We're actually going to be watching a tropical system that's coming out of the Baja that could bring, see that stripe of heavier rain there? Through parts of Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota. Now, there's some uncertainty about this. The last few model runs from the GFS keep putting it in there, but I'm not 100% buying that it's going to be able to survive that whole track. If we just step back, though, and look at the bigger picture, we're bringing in a lot of precipitation over the next couple of weeks in the northern plains, in the northern parts of the Midwest. So just think about what this may mean for some early harvest efforts. Think about what this may mean for the crop that's maybe a week or two that's behind schedule, and this is what we've got. When you talk about where it's going to be getting cold, though, I'm concerned about the area that I'm wrapping up right here as I draw. In fact, to kind of simplify this, I put in the background kind of a county-by-county production map of corn so you can kind of see where the corn belt is. As we transition into this new pattern with a broader trough over the west and a big ridge over the east, the eastern corn belt goes back into a ridge and warmer temperatures. The very far northern part of the corn belt, so think North Dakota, Montana, they're too much in this trough to really get back toward warmer temperatures. So we're going to be seeing some cooler weather here stretching out over the next couple of weeks. And this whole region that I'm kind of circling here is looking wet. So that's an important feature to be on the lookout for. There will more than likely be a pretty sharp dividing line in through here, where to the east and south of that it's dry, to the north and west of it it's going to be wet. That's what happens when we build a deep trough out west, building into a ridge over the east. So the Corn Belt gets the full spectrum here of weather in the coming days. Very important to see that all as we kind of move forward here. So this is our first look at what early harvest is looking like right now. I also have to turn my attention very, very quickly toward the tropics. One of the neat things about having a couple of big tropical systems, here's the path of Irma, And here's the path of Harvey. One of the neat things about having these big systems come through is they've churned up a lot of cooler water from down below the ocean surface and extracted that heat off the top layer. So we've cooled off the waters here, which means that any subsequent system that moves through this area will be dealing with cooler waters. And because hurricane strength is directly tied to sea surface temperature, this is at least some better news than otherwise. What's going on in the tropics? Well, we have Jose. We'll take a close look at that in a moment. But two easterly waves that just came off of the west coast of Africa, moving through the main development region. We are many days away from this impacting the United States, but we're still watching the tropics. We're only halfway through our hurricane season. Don't forget that. So let's take a look at what Jose is going to do. Jose, as it kind of curls and moves on off to the north, here getting pulled around a large subtropical high that's sitting out here in the open ocean, is going to weaken quite a bit of wind shear. Our concern is that as Jose moves to the north, there are some model suggestions that Jose might take a left turn and come into the northeast. But it will be a weakened system. This is primarily would be a rainmaker if, and that's a big if the system kind of turns into the northeast. Clearly not making a big impact, though, on the Corn Belt. Most model consensus keeps Hurricane Jose out in the open ocean, which is really what we want right now. I just bring all this up to kind of give you the full spectrum on the weather. Remember, watch out for the pattern shift that's coming for the Corn Belt. It's an important one because of as we near here toward harvest time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We hope you look forward to Agrible's next ag forecast coming out early in the morning on Monday. To get Morning Farm Report for your operations, complete with a daily email that shows you a snapshot of your field conditions, go to morningfarmreport.com. Sign up for that free account. Full grower accounts are free if you sign up for our Sustainable Yield Program or for growers who work with ADM merchandisers. I look forward to talking again after the weekend. Thank you.